Imagine, like, intentionally losing 118 basketball games over 2 brutal years.
Oh, man.
Right? You just completely alienate your season ticket holders. You put a miserable, just unwatchable product on the floor, and you do it all for, a 14% mathematical chance at drafting a franchise savior.
Exactly.
And then the ping pong balls bounce, they open the envelopes, and you walk away with absolutely nothing. Today, we are diving into the sheer, unadulterated carnage of the 2026 NBA Draft Lottery.
It really is just a spectacular collision of, mathematics, desperation, and just blind luck.
Yeah.
We're looking at a system that was initially designed to manufacture parity, but instead it just delivered this chaotic, highly uneven distribution of talent. And, it's going to alter the trajectory of the league for the next decade.
Totally. So welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack all this madness for you. We're looking at the ultimate winners, the devastating losers, and the hidden mechanics behind why some teams just struck absolute gold while others had their hearts ripped out.
Right. And to set the stage, you really have to understand the stakes of this specific year. Like, this is not your average draft class.
No, not at all.
The consensus across the board is that this is a super top-heavy 4-player draft. We are talking about 4 potential generational pillars. You've got AJ Dybantsa, Cameron Boozer, Darren Peterson, and Caleb Wilson.
Yeah, getting into that top 4 is just the ultimate prize.
And securing that prize is, honestly, harder than it has ever been. And that's because of the mechanics of the modern NBA. A few years ago, the league flattened the lottery odds to actively discourage teams from just aggressively tanking.
Right, they wanted to stop the race to the bottom.
Exactly. Having the worst record in the league, it no longer guarantees you the top pick. It just gives you a slightly less terrible statistical probability.
Yeah.
And this year's lottery proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that trying to mathematically engineer a rebuild by losing on purpose is just the riskiest gamble a front office can possibly take.
It really is. So let's start with the franchises whose gamble actually paid out. The winners. And we have to start at the absolute top with the Washington Wizards securing the #1 overall pick.
The timing for Washington is really what makes this so impactful. If we analyze their trade deadline moves, they literally just acquired Trae Young and Anthony Davis.
That's wild.
Right. They pivoted so hard from this slow, methodical rebuild into a hyper-aggressive win-now window.
But, doesn't that make winning the lottery almost a glitch in the Matrix? Because they accelerated their timeline, they built this veteran core, and still somehow ended up holding the ultimate asset.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They either draft Dybantsa to slot directly in next to Trae and AD, or, they use that pick as the ultimate atomic trade chip.
Oh, for sure. It's a massive advantage, and specifically because of the new collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
Because under those new luxury tax apron rules, teams are heavily penalized for having multiple maximum contracts. They lose trade flexibility, they lose their mid-level exception.
It gets ugly fast.
Exactly. But holding the #1 overall pick, well, that gives Washington 4 years of an elite top-tier talent on a strictly controlled, relatively cheap rookie-scale contract. It basically acts as this vital pressure release valve for their salary cap.
Yeah, you get the superstar production without the superstar price tag.
Right.
It's huge. But speaking of front office maneuvers, we really need to talk about the Utah Jazz at #2.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
Because to me, this feels like, I don't know, a driver getting a $50 speeding ticket while rushing to cash a winning multi-million-dollar lottery ticket.
That is a highly functional analogy,
Right.
especially considering the NBA literally fined the Jazz $500,000 for sitting healthy players down the stretch.
Yeah, they actively punished them for compromising the integrity of the game.
Right. Essentially for fake tanking.
Wait, but if they were actively punished, how can we actually call the system a deterrent? Like, a $500,000 fine is absolute couch change for an NBA ownership group.
Oh, totally.
Especially when you compare it to the billion-dollar valuation bump of drafting a franchise cornerstone.
Well, that is the glaring loophole the league has to face heading into the next offseason. The financial penalty is completely irrelevant when weighed against the competitive reward.
Exactly.
And Utah already has this massive stockpile of young talent. They boast elite rim protection with Walker Kessler and then dynamic perimeter scoring with Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George.
Yeah, they're loaded.
Right. So by adding a versatile spacing forward like Cameron Boozer or Darren Peterson right into that exact mix, they instantly become the most dangerous young team in the Western Conference.
It's scary.
They possess the assets to either let this core grow organically or, package those chips for a disgruntled superstar.
They basically received a slap on the wrist and were handed the keys to the vault. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Moving to number 3, we have the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, they jumped up 3 spots from where they were statistically projected to land.
And jumping into the top 3 completely revitalizes the Memphis timeline. I mean, they endured a gap year, mostly due to freak injuries and off-court suspensions.
Yeah, it was a weird year for them.
But their core is already built to compete for a Western Conference Finals appearance. So, similar to Washington's situation, injecting a top-tier foundational piece on a rookie contract while you are paying your veterans max money is just the ultimate cap manipulation tool.
Yeah, they get to bypass the rebuild completely, which is great for them. But if we are talking about bypassing pain, we have to examine the Los Angeles Clippers landing the number 5 pick.
Oh, man, the Clippers.
Like, they didn't even land in the consensus top 4, but they are arguably the biggest winners of the entire night. It's like a guy winning a massive poker pot without even sitting at the table.
It really is. And to understand why the Clippers are celebrating a number 5 pick, we have to unpack the mechanics of pick protections.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
So, years ago, the Clippers traded center Ivica Zubac to the Indiana Pacers in exchange for a future first-round draft pick. But Indiana placed a top 4 protection on that specific pick.
Actually, let me pause you there just to make sure we're totally clear on the mechanics for the audience.
Yeah.
A pick protection is basically like an insurance deductible for a trade, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So Indiana essentially says, hey, we will give you our draft pick unless it ends up being a super valuable top 4 pick. In that specific scenario, we keep it and we will owe you something else later down the road.
That is the exact mechanism. So as the ping pong balls are bouncing, Indiana desperately needs that pick to land at 1, 2, 3, or 4 to retain it.
Right.
But the exact second that pick landed at number 5, the protection failed. The insurance policy expired.
Wow.
And the pick instantaneously transferred to the Los Angeles Clippers.
That is just incredible. They are standing across the room, totally uninvolved in the tanking race, and a top 5 pick just falls right into their lap. And look at their salary cap situation. I mean, Kawhi Leonard is sitting on an expiring $50 million contract. With those punitive tax aprons we mentioned earlier, the Clippers were staring down a terrifying financial cliff.
A huge cliff.
Suddenly, role players like Nicholas Batum and Chris Dunn might come off the books, and they get to inject a top 5 rookie talent into a freshly cleaned cap sheet. They literally just accelerated a youth rebuild they didn't even know they were starting.
They completely skipped the painful multi-year deconstruction phase that most franchises have to endure when an era ends. It's wild.
Okay, I want to pivot now, and I want to talk directly to you, the listener, because I know you are a massive Chicago Bulls fan, and frankly, you deserve a break.
It really do.
Your team has been trapped in the most miserable place in professional sports, just the dreaded middle, not quite good enough to make a deep playoff run, but not bad enough to organically earn a top draft pick.
Basically purgatory. And breaking out of purgatory usually requires blowing up the entire roster and starting from scratch.
But your Bulls leaped from number 9 all the way up to number 4. You had a minuscule 1.5% chance at the number 1 pick and roughly a 20% chance just to mathematically jump into the top 4.
And the basketball gods finally smiled on Chicago.
They did. What I find fascinating in the coverage is this phrase, ethical tanking.
It's a brilliant term for what unfolded in Chicago. I mean, unlike Utah, the Bulls didn't bench healthy star players to manipulate the final standing.
Right, no $500,000 fines for them.
Exactly. They didn't actively sabotage their own games. They just genuinely were not a very good basketball team.
Yeah.
They played their rotation, they tried to compete, and they lost organically.
Yeah. Ethical tanking implies a clean conscience. And let's look at what this means for your new vice president of basketball operations, Bryson Graham. Usually, when a new executive takes over a team mired in the middle, they inherit a tangled mess of bloated contracts and aging veterans.
Yeah.
They have to spend their first 2 years just trying to find the floor.
Instead, Graham is handed an absolute gift. By landing at number 4, he receives a completely clean slate and a guaranteed top 4 prospect from that elite tier we outlined earlier.
Yeah.
Meaning, he is assured of either Boozer, Peterson, Wilson, or Dybantsa. Plus, Let's not forget, Chicago also holds the 15th overall pick from the Portland Trail Blazers. So the front office suddenly possesses immense roster-building flexibility.
Okay, but let me push back on this narrative that this is a total dream scenario for Graham.
Okay.
Does picking fourth in a consensus four-player draft actually take the pressure off the front office?
Yeah.
Well, think about it. He doesn't have to be the genius who identifies a diamond in the rough.
No.
He doesn't have to be the brave executive who controversially passes on a projected superstar.
Right.
He literally just sits at the draft podium, waits for Washington, Utah, and Memphis to make their selections, and happily takes whoever is left out of that tier. Doesn't that make his job almost too easy? Like, does he actually get credit if the player pans out?
Well, he might not receive the visionary label from the media for the selection itself, but it fundamentally shields him from immediate criticism.
That's true.
If the player he drafts at 4 struggles to adjust to the NBA 3 years down the line, he can legitimately point to the consensus draft boards and say, look, this was the unanimous remaining player in the top tier. The risk mitigation is enormous.
Well, I see that.
But more importantly for Chicago fans, it exercises some very dark ghosts for the franchise.
Oh, the ghost of the number 4 pick.
Yes. The number 4 overall pick has haunted Chicago for 2 decades. The previous front office missed badly when they reached for Patrick Williams at number 4 in 2020.
Ouch.
And historically, you have the absolute nightmare of 2006, trading the draft rights of LaMarcus Aldridge for Tyrese Thomas at that exact same spot.
Ugh. Those are the kinds of draft blunders that just keep fans awake at night.
They really are. But because this is an entirely new regime under Bryson Graham, you can finally sever those emotional ties. You do not have to project the failures of the past administration onto this current pick.
Yeah.
You can just enjoy the reality of adding elite, franchise-altering talent to a roster that desperately needs a new identity.
So, Chicago and the Clippers are experiencing pure, unadulterated joy. But, the draft lottery is a zero-sum game. Every single time a team like the Bulls or the Grizzlies mathematically leaps up into the top 4, they physically push another franchise down the ladder.
Yeah, that is the unforgiving reality of the bouncing ping pong balls. The incredible luck of the winners we just discussed was heavily subsidized by the direct, devastating expense of 3 specific franchises.
The losers. And let's start with the ultimate heartbreak we teased earlier, the Indiana Pacers.
The Pacers. They serve as a masterclass in catastrophic risk management.
Honestly.
They constructed their entire season around acquiring a high draft pick to pair alongside Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam. They subjected their fan base to a season of miserable, unwatchable basketball.
Let's explain the agonizing math of how this blew up in their faces. We talked about the Clippers getting the number 5 pick because of the top 4 protection. Well, that pick originally belonged to Indiana. The Pacers tanked all year. They needed that pick to land at 1, 2, 3, or 4 just to keep it.
And the mathematical probability of them landing in the top 4 was actually in their favor based on their final regular season record.
Exactly.
But the lottery balls fell in the absolute worst possible sequence. They landed exactly at number 5.
So painful.
The precise singular slot that triggered the transfer to Los Angeles.
It is brutal. You endured an abysmal season. You train your fans to embrace the losing for the greater good, and you walk away with 0 reward in a historically stacked draft.
0.
And now the front office has to face the music regarding that Ivica Zubac trade.
Yeah.
Like, Zubac is a highly serviceable starting caliber center, sure, but giving up a top 5 pick in a generational draft to get him?
Yeah, it becomes an indefensible outcome in hindsight, and it puts immense immediate pressure on the Indiana front office to win next season.
They have to.
They sacrificed their premium future asset for present-day positional flexibility, and the lottery algorithm effectively laughed in their faces. They have absolutely no margin for error left.
If Indiana's heartbreak, the Brooklyn Nets are just sheer calculated misery. I mean, we mentioned them at the very beginning of this deep dive. 118 losses over 2 years of aggressive, intentional tanking.
Yeah, Brooklyn's strategy exposes the fundamental flaw in trying to outsmart the flattened lottery odds. They beg their fans to trust the process.
Right.
They stripped the roster down to the bare studs, and they failed to secure a top 5 pick in either of those 2 drafts. This year, they fell down to number 6.
And I want to make sure we explain just how tracked Brooklyn really is. They don't even have a safety net for next year. They owe what is called a pick swap to the Houston Rockets.
That swap is deadly.
Right. For anyone hazy on the mechanics of a pick swap, it means even if Brooklyn puts together another historically terrible season and somehow wins the lottery next year, Houston has the legal right to just tap them on the shoulder, swap tickets with them, and steal that higher pick.
Yep.
Brooklyn takes all the developmental risk, and Houston gets all the upside.
Which means the Nets are essentially devoid of a cornerstone, face the franchise player, and they have no reliable mechanism to draft one next year either. Furthermore, landing at number 6 in this specific 2026 draft class is a roster construction nightmare for them.
Because of the massive positional drop-off, right?
That drop-off is the fatal flaw here. The Nets desperately need front-court dominance. They need size, power, and interior rebounding.
Desperately.
But the premium forwards, Dybantsa, Boozer, Peterson, and Wilson, they're firmly locked into the top 4 picks. By the time Brooklyn is on the clock at 6, they are going to be staring at a pool of undersized guards. They will likely be forced to draft a player that heavily overlaps with their current roster, simply because the lottery math pushed them out of the premium forward tier.
They are starving for a center.
Yeah.
And the only thing left on the menu is point guards.
Yeah.
Awful. Speaking of point guards, let's talk about our final loser, the Sacramento Kings. They slid out of the premium spots and fell down to number 7.
The Kings are a really fascinating case study in the sheer irony of the NBA's current incentive structure. I mean, we talked about how the Utah Jazz actively benched their rotation players, paid a fine, and won the number 2 pick.
Yeah.
Sacramento did the exact opposite.
Which is wild because they actually tried to play competitive basketball.
They really did. The Kings' front office and coaching staff tried to instill a winning culture down the stretch. They pushed their rotation players. They went 10-14 in their final 24 games.
Trying to establish good habits.
Exactly. Good habits going into the offseason.
And for respecting the integrity of the sport, the math punished them. By winning those 10 games, Sacramento moved just high enough in the overall league standings to slice their lottery probability in half. The system actively penalized them for trying to build a winning culture in April, dropping them down to the 7th spot.
And that drop creates a massive strategic headache for their front office because at number 7, just like Brooklyn at 6, the best players available on the board are almost certainly going to be point guards.
Yeah, we are talking about guys like Darius Acup Jr. or Kingston Flemings, but here is the massive complication our sources point out. The Kings are heavily rumored to be structuring a blockbuster trade for Ja Morant.
Yep.
If you are Sacramento, you cannot draft a highly touted point guard in the top 10 if you are simultaneously trying to trade your remaining assets for an all-star point guard. It creates an immediate conflict of interest on the roster.
It completely neutralizes their optionality. And in the modern NBA, optionality is your most valuable currency. By falling to 7, the Kings are boxed into a corner. They either draft a redundant position and create a logjam in their backcourt, or they try to trade the 7th pick for pennies on the dollar because every other general manager in the league knows they are absolutely desperate to move it.
They are completely backed into a corner by a system they tried to play, honestly. It's a shame. So let's zoom out and look at the landscape we've just mapped. We have the Wizards and Grizzlies getting massive cap relief with rookie stars.
Yep.
We have you, the Bulls fan, finding ethical salvation and a clean slate. And we have the Pacers, Nets, and Kings getting utterly destroyed by the cold calculus of the ping pong balls. Where does this leave the league's overarching strategy?
Honestly, I think it leaves the league staring down a massive existential crisis regarding competitive balance. I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder, something that builds on this entire chaotic picture.
Okay, let's hear it.
In a lottery where blatant rule-breaking tanking, like we saw with Utah, was handsomely rewarded with the number 2 pick, but genuine, grueling tanking in Brooklyn and Indiana resulted in unmitigated disaster, is this the final straw? Like, will this wildly uneven distribution of talent, which punishes honest teams and destroys bad ones while rewarding those who game the system, force the NBA to completely abolish the draft lottery system in the next collective bargaining agreement? If the mechanism is this fundamentally broken, is it time to tear it down completely?
It is a spectacular question.
Yeah.
You want to believe that professional sports are a clean meritocracy, that the standings dictate the reward. But after watching the absolute carnage of the 2026 draft lottery, we are forced to admit that sometimes you can run all the right calculations, build the perfect strategy, and still find out that the entire system is hopelessly broken.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. Please comment, like, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Spotify, please leave 5-star review. It will help the channel grow. Until next time, please check our previous episodes.